Nice to have you back. Well, postnatal depression affects almost 16% of new mothers around the country, yet for most of them, it's something they were never prepared for. It can be lonely, it can be exhausting, debilitating, and like many mental illnesses, people really are not very open about it. So this morning we're joined by three parents who have first-hand experience in this issue. Angela Mollard joins us, along with Dannielle Miller, who have both overcome postnatal depression, as well as, and we're grateful to have Peter Overton, who knows what it's like to watch the mother of his children go through this. All of you, I really welcome you to this. It is such an important issue. You have very personal aspects of your life that you're prepared to open up about, so I do appreciate it. Angela, you suffered postnatal depression. What, and I want to get to the feelings that you were experiencing to know that something was wrong.
Oh, well, look, I had my first child, no problem at all. Second child came along. My husband was travelling all the time, sort of up to 6-7 months of the year. I have no family in New South Wales where I live. And I just started to feel anxious and very, very irritable, very angry. The children's crying was starting to make me feel uncomfortable. And it all sort of came to a climax one day when I had my baby. She was crying. I couldn't make her stop crying. And I genuinely thought, if I could just smash her head against the bedroom wall, it would all be all right. And I had to put her in the bed and walk out of the room. My husband was away. I couldn't really talk to my mum, and I can talk to my mum about anything, but she'd been such a brilliant parent and such a wonderful mother and capable that I couldn't talk to her about it. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, was out by the washing line. My daughter pulled the white sheets I'd just washed off the line, my 3-year-old, and I just collapsed in the gravel in a heap. And I had the good sense to ring a friend, and she came round and she just took over my kids, poured me a glass of wine, and after that I went to the doctor.
Wow. Did the anger really disturb you, or were you in a mental place that it wasn't unusual?
Oh, no, it really did disturb me. I was very... Look, there were other episodes as well, not a lot, but, you know, it was so intense, I think. That was the thing. And so shocking for someone who's always been able to cope with everything and gone through life with really, you know, I found life great, you know, easy, fun, and I thought that parenting would be too, but I just realised it wasn't something, what I had to realise was it's something I wasn't going to get marked on. It was just something that was, and something I had to get through.
Now, Peter, clearly, as I said, 60% of women suffer postnatal depression, which means 16% of blokes do as well. It's been well documented that Jessica has experienced this. But as a husband, at what stage did you know something was wrong?
I can remember it vividly, Kerri-Anne. It was one night I was working for 60 Minutes. We just had this beautiful Allegra, and Jessica, I can still see her sitting on the couch, just looked at me and said, I'm not coping. I can't cope. I can't do this. Things were pretty challenging at the time. She'd lost her job. We had this new bubba, and she fell apart. And it was at that moment that I realised something was desperately wrong. And the first thing I said was, you're not going to harm yourself, I hope? And she said no. And I said, you're not going to harm Allegra? And she said no. And I said, that's good. I gave her a huge hug and said, everything's going to be all right. I promise you that much. The next morning I got onto our wonderful obstetrician and explained to her, and she said, you know, Jessica's very, very unwell. We got her into a psychiatrist who specialised in P&D, and Jessica, I think, went into a cradle of care, and we did emerge the other side. But it was horribly confronting. The doctor, the obstetrician, said to me, I was working for 60 Minutes, this is your priority. You have a wife who is very, very unwell. Don't think this is just the baby blues. This is something that has really engulfed her. And thank God we came through the other side.
The week before, for instance, were there any bells ringing for you as a bloke? Because, you know, come on, and I'm not trying to do blokey stuff. Blokes have a tendency to go into the cave.
We're solution-driven.
Yeah, you have a different way of doing stuff. Was anything ringing for you?
I thought, like most families, like most men would think, come on, what's going on here? We've got a brand new baby, we've got our beautiful nursery that we've set up, our life is complete. As I look back, I think, my goodness me, I wasn't picking up on signs. I wasn't acknowledging that we weren't, Jessica wasn't well.
So you did recognise it, but only after the fact. Now, again, Dannielle, you've had your own experiences. Perhaps you can tell us.
Mine was a little different to Angela's in that I felt quite removed, actually. I didn't feel strong emotion. I felt like I was numb and I was seeing life almost through a filter. So I remember a vivid moment where I was sitting out on the grass with my little girl Tia and we were blowing bubbles and it was a sunshiny day. And I remember thinking, this should be such a beautiful moment. I should be so happy. Yet I'm not. I just feel so numb. And the irony was that during that stage, I looked like I was coping beautifully. I'd actually lost a lot of weight because I was so nervous and anxious, so I had that yummy mummy look. Part of my mode of coping, I suppose, was to keep the house really well ordered, dressed my little girl beautifully. So I was constantly being told that I was coping so well. And I remember thinking, but can't you see on the inside I'm dying? And I just felt like I was just losing myself and losing myself in exhaustion.
Okay, now, everything's easy in hindsight. More enormously traumatic things to go through. Now, this was more with your second baby than your first, so let's get back to why. What is to do with hormones? What is to do with isolation? What is it to do with just trying to be brave? What is it to do with genetics? Now, how do we divvy this up, Pete?
Well, I'm no doctor, but Jessica's family has her mother has a bipolar disorder, so I was wondering if that had flowed on. I think it was a lot to do with the pressure of trying to be everything to everyone, the perfect mum. And
which then in turn messes up the hormones?
I don't know. I can't explain that, but put it this way, medication was the path we went down with Jessica, and she remembers 3 or 4 weeks after that medication had kicked in, it must have been the chemicals, whatever, was starting to balance up, and she could smell the jasmine. I'll never forget her saying, at last I can smell the jasmine.
I remember the
I can
moments like that
feel
too.
life again. I feel, while I've got this face on that everyone's thinking, wow, look at me, she was dying inside.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, medication helped her.
And what was your
I didn't have
solution?
medication. I went to the doctor, had a huge long consult, and then ended up seeing a psychologist and went through cognitive behavioural therapy, which has proven to have quite a lot of success with postnatal depression. And what it is, it's a talking therapy. So basically it challenges the way that you observe and see things and sort of rewires your brain to see it in a different way. And I also made huge lifestyle changes. So I paid for childcare, some childcare when my husband was away for long periods of time. I got a cleaner. I just did things where I invested in my family, and I rewired my brain to say, you know, it doesn't matter if they're eating Weet-Bix for dinner. They don't have to have pureed organic broccoli. It doesn't matter. They're not going to die. And just learned the concept, it's good enough. It's good enough just to get through the day.
And in my case, I think it was a combination of hormones and sleep deprivation. My little girl wasn't a good sleeper, and I didn't have a full night's sleep, you know, until she was about 2. But I remember once when I was completely exhausted, hearing on the radio that there'd been a study that showed there was a correlation between postnatal depression and sleep deprivation. And I thought, I mean, the Geneva Convention outlaws sleep deprivation as a form of torture. So it absolutely took a toll on me, as did hormones. I had retained placenta, and that set my hormones racing. And for me, medication was also a real lifesaver.
But experiencing it, going through it, having to make the decision to see specialists on it, and knowing those words, I bet, are still ringing in your ear, the specialists. Do you ever look back and say, if I'd missed that signal, or Jessica hadn't been brave enough to go to her husband and go, I'm not coping, can you imagine?
Thank God she did.
But not everybody's always that brave,
but
or
you know
has
what?
that close relationship.
Well, that's exactly right. You know how I actually found out the depths of despair? Was practical man, we got her into care. Jessica confided in her mother and the psychiatrist. How I discovered the depths of it was one afternoon, several weeks afterwards, I got home and Jessica started to write an article for Vogue Australia about her experience. An article that she still gets thanked for by people in the street. And it was open on the computer while I was about to check the emails, and I read it. And I just sobbed because she talked about how you felt, Angela, about wanting to smash the bubba's head. She talked about a little Tiffany clock we were given that she wanted to use, and I'll never, ever forget that. She came home and I said, wow, I didn't know it was this bad. And she said it was. And she said, I only spoke to Mum and the doctor about it. I didn't want to worry you. So I say to any father, and even the lovely young fathers I know around here who are about to become dads, I say, you know, if your wife's anxious, if she's if her mood's changed, if she's not enjoying things that she usually enjoys, if she's not sleeping, and these things last more than a week, then it ain't the baby blues. Well, you better check it ain't the baby blues.
But who wants to be?
Heard her.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember trying to have conversations with my partner, and he just would say, "Get over it. You'll be all right. You're really strong." Thank goodness you heard her.
But for intelligent people, let's face it, we all think we're bright. To show vulnerability looks like weakness, because at times in our lives, when you show vulnerability and weakness, people take advantage of it. Now, how do we then isolate that area of vulnerability and the ability to show it and not have it transfer into every other partner? Oh, you're weak, you're weak, you're weak. So how do we show that in that area?
I think that's a brilliant question, because I even question coming on the show and talking about it. How does it look to talk about it? And you know what? There is still a stigma around these issues, but it's so commonplace, and we need to talk about it. You are vulnerable. You're not always going to be vulnerable.
But
you're going to be
only
strong
vulnerable
again.
in that one
exactly.
area. Do you find that an important? You're only vulnerable in that spot. Everything else is fine. But at that point in time, that is basically the sum total of who and what you are.
Yeah, 100% it was. It was, and it took great bravery from Jessica to speak out. This is only the second time I've spoken about it publicly. But it needs to be done, and we need to realise that this is an illness, that it is nothing to be ashamed of, that families and partners need to know that you must care and look after them, not go, you'll be right, like your partner did.
It is, everybody has a trait. You know, the relationship, and I think the personal relationship has got to be at the base, and he's hoping. As a newsman, you know, we have to move on.
The clock is ticking, Kerri-Anne.
The news waits for almost nobody, not even one of the most important stories we have. Angela, again, deep thanks. Dannielle, to you. And quite sincerely, Peter, we do appreciate it. And I just hope people who are out there perhaps in this position as we speak, who have genuinely listened and heard what our guests have said, it means something to you. Help is at hand. Good news coming up also. We talk about Fergie, and it's quite an extraordinary. There you have Fergie and Tears over a completely different issue. And also we take a bit of a tour of TMZ in Hollywood. Stay with us.